Hi, everybody, and welcome to Level Up Your Visuals, AI for Stunning Images and Presentations. This hour-long workshop is going to be a jam-packed kind of whirlwind tour, kind of sampler, if you will, of current capabilities in the realm of AI image creation and interpretation, including AI presentation and now video creation. So lots to look at, using both free and premium tools, which we'll introduce as we go, or which we'll indicate as we go. So for example, the image you see here was generated by DALL-E 3, which is a text-to-image generator created by OpenAI, the same company that brought us ChatGPT. So this presentation and workshop will be recorded, but feel free to jump in, ask questions, use the chat. We would like it to be interactive, even though we're going to try to get through a lot of content in this next hour. Please do, participate and ask questions if you like. And as we move through these capabilities, we're going to, look at a lot of different things AI image tools can currently do. I wanted to stress the importance of collaboration and iteration when using these tools. They've got many promising capabilities and also some limitations. And as always with any AI tools, you are, of course, the experts, and all the outputs and interpretations we look at should always be evaluated, right, for accuracy, bias, and relevancy to your discipline and your objective. So there are 4 of us presenting today, all from the city team. For the sake of time, I'm just going to show you our names and everyone wave hello. I'm Laura. We also have Emily, Peg, and Daniel here today, all to talk about different aspects of AI image generation and interpretation. And here's our agenda, so you can see what's coming up. We've got, we'll start off with a visual literacy icebreaker. We'll move on to Emily's presentation on how AI image generation tools work. Then Daniel will talk us through the process of generating image from text or text to image. Then Emily and I will take a look at image to text and those capabilities. And then Peg is going to sort of wrap all that up in a nice presentation on AI generated presentations and videos. So, and then hopefully we'll have time for your questions and discussion, because there's lots to talk about with respect to, how these can be used in your teaching and learning. So here are our learning objectives. I'm not going to read through all of them because they very closely relate to the agenda items I just mentioned, but feel free to read through them on your own time. And we may come back to some of these objectives as we look through some of these tools. First, we wanted to start with an icebreaker or an exercise. And I think it's really important when trying to understand the advantages and limitations of AI-produced imagery that we first need to study it closely. And as you know, as with any discipline, but especially in health sciences education, close looking, close observation, and visual literacy is really important. It's an important skill to acquire and to teach to our students. So we wanted to apply that here in the realm of AI, in the sense calling it AI visual literacy. Especially, we know that it's becoming an increasingly important skill to master as we become more saturated with these kinds of images, and AI becomes ever more pervasive in the realm of higher education and medicine. So what we're going to do is just take about a minute or so to sort of quietly look at what we're seeing. This is an image generated by Microsoft Bing AI Copilot in January of this year, generated from a prompt that I gave to Bing. So what I'd love for you guys to do is to take a look at the image, jotting down what you're seeing, any words that come to mind that describe what you're seeing, specifically noting what you think is significant about the image and any anomalies that you observe, which I'm sure you guys can observe a lot more than we can, given your expertise in the subject. Feel free to throw any of those observations in the chat, and then we will talk about them. So again, just some quiet looking, noting what we're seeing, and then some discussion. Maybe we should have played some music after all, Emily. All right, thanks, Julianne. Getting us started. Julianne says, I see an IV, but it is not attached to a patient. Yeah. It's interesting. The closer you look, more inconsistencies come to light. What else do you notice about the image? What are we looking at?
The hands are so weird.
Yeah, Chelsea says the patient looks exhausted. Feel free to unmute yourself also. So much for my quiet looking exercise. Let's just talk about it. Unmute yourselves, put it in the chat. Chelsea said the patient looks exhausted. Yes. Kathy says medical provider doing an assessment. Not sure what his right hand is doing. We really should have tried to zoom in on these images. Unfortunately, we don't yet have that capability. Any other observations about what you're seeing? Would you recognize this as an AI generated image if you saw it? Safety rails are not up, seem to be missing. Oh, yeah. I hadn't noticed that. Good call. You see, you guys are placement of the bell stethoscope is strange, says Julie.
Oh, it looks airbrushed.
Highly airbrushed. Yeah. It reminds me of Pixar a bit.
Joan's got a good point. Why is another healthcare provider sitting at a desk in a hospital room? And again, another IV pole with IV bags hanging, but no tubes to nowhere.
You know, it makes me think of Stephen Colbert had that term years ago called truthiness.
Oh, yes.
So, and take the instruments on the wall behind her, and I'm not a physician, so I don't know if these are just implying instruments you would find as opposed to actually being real instruments. So that sort of thing.
Our very elderly patient has amazing calves. I mean, she looks like a marathon runner on the bottom.
She does. Any other observations in using your mic or your chat? Daniel, your comment reminded me of AI's tendency to be confidently incorrect. I forget who said that, but I love that expression. So if you go ahead and go on to the next slide, we can see how this image was generated. So again, this was using Bing, freely accessible tool that you can get through your Microsoft login. It was generated by this prompt, and I'll just read the prompt aloud. Please create a realistic image. The image should show a doctor performing an examination of a patient who presents at a hospital emergency room in respiratory distress. The nurse is a female African-American woman. Notice the inconsistencies because I forgot to change the role here. So there's two different roles being requested, but I wanted to give to you exactly what I inputted. The image should depict the doctor and patient receiving an examination in a hospital triage room. In the room should be objects commonly found in a triage room in a hospital emergency room. The patient should be an elderly Caucasian American woman. She should physically display symptoms of respiratory distress. And forgive me for any of my lack of knowledge of terms and misuse of terms in this prompt. This was a result of a kind of cumulative sort of result of iterative interaction between me and Bing to generate a series of images, of which this was the most accurate, shockingly, that I was able to get. But you notice that there are some differences between the prompt I inputted and the output that was generated, right? Specifically the role of the healthcare provider or the identity of the healthcare provider. However, I think Bing did a nice job, again, portraying the woman in some state of distress. But you've able to note a variety of different anomalies that you can observe in the image, factual inaccuracies, in fact. Any other comments about this image or the prompt that was used to generate it? So feel free to put those in the chat or chime in. Chelsea says, I like the male nurse. Great. Feel free to, again, put your comments in the chat or chime in. I think maybe we'll go on to Emily, who'll give us some information about how these tools work.
All right, so hi everyone. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a brief yet high-level overview of how text-to-image AI features work. And they do this essentially by manipulating lots of tiny pixels to produce a readable image as we see on this slide. So moving sort of to the static on the left to something comprehensible on the right. Before I go into depth, I just want to contextualize AI and text generation a teeny bit. So a reminder, at the broadest level, artificial intelligence, or AI, is often used to describe the ability of computers or machines to complete tasks typically ascribed to humans. Both text generation tools like ChatGPT and image generation tools like Bing or Bard or some of the other tools we'll talk about today belong to a subclass of AI called generative AI. On the one hand, we have tools like ChatGPT, which are based on transformer models, and this is due to their abilities to sort, comprehend, and produce text. But what we're going to focus on today are the image generation tools that use something called diffusion models. So if you can move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how those diffusion models work. So using diffusion models, any user can create images from scratch with textual input, which is pretty exciting, especially for people like me with no artistic ability. Now, when I think about using text to image models, I like to think about having a canvas on which I want to paint a picture. But instead of using paint, I'm using a complex algorithm to form an image. The other thing that I want to note is that instead of starting with a blank canvas, the image generation process starts with noise. And that's what we saw on the previous image, that sort of staticky representation on the left. And just to recap, that's sort of, we can think of it as a random collection of pixels that don't have any meaningful pattern. As part of its training process, the AI image generation model we can think of it as comprised of all this noise and static and pixels, as well as images. And what it does is it sort of makes sense of all those pixels and chaos as part of its training data, and it starts refining its algorithms so that eventually, when any user puts in text, it will start manipulating those pixels either by adding them or removing them and kind of shifting the randomness that we see, and eventually it will reveal, hopefully, the desired picture. As Laura discussed, it's not always that clear cut. So that's sort of the training process. And this is where the user comes in. So we have this model, it's trained on images, and it sort of moves it around into these pixelated, chaotic elements. When we want to use it, we describe to the tool what we want to see. And maybe I want to see a sunset over the ocean. The AI tool uses this as a guide, a lot like an artist might have a vision in mind when they want to paint and they're starting out. Because of its training in the images that have been fed into the model, it will tap into all of this knowledge, and it will make sense of the relationship between words and images because it's learned to understand what a sunset over the ocean should look like. So it will go through lots of iterations, and eventually the AI will sort of adjust the pixels to create an image. So in this way, it moves from abstract noise or pixels into a coherent image that resembles your description. It's not always identical to your description, unfortunately. Right, so that's like a brief overview of how AI image generation works in a nutshell. If we can advance to the next slide, I'll say a few things about some of the different models. And here I've just listed mostly free tools, some of which we'll talk about today, like Bing Image Creator, Canva. Gemini just was released last week. It's free for 2 months, so if you're a Google person, you might try that. And then I do want to suggest this image on the left is the same, it's based on the same prompt that Laura used, but I put it into a tool that I'm really enjoying. It's called Prompt Perfect, and it allows you to refine and tweak prompts, and it will give you output for a variety of tools, including Midjourney. So I don't have Midjourney, I'm not willing to pay for it, but using this other tool, I could create this image through a Midjourney, which if we were to compare it side by side with Laura's image, I think it's quite different, which is fascinating. I don't think we're going to pause to comment on the difference at this time, but if you wanted to throw something in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And I think that's all I was going to share for right now about how image generation works. But if you have questions, certainly feel free to put them in the chat.
Okay, so this is, can everyone hear me okay? this is going to be a little demonstration on what that process looks like when you are using text to generate images. And I don't know why the well-tempered prompt popped into my mind. I think I was thinking of making a gag about Bach saying that computers will never make music or something like that. But it served as actually a nice little example of actually creating using, in this case, Dolly and Bing to create this image pretty quickly. So there's four things to kind of consider, and we'll touch on these as we move through this demonstration. But these are sort of the major elements that you want to make sure you're advised to include as you build a prompt. So text prompt should have some content to them, so 3 to 7 words at least in length. This is one of those cases where oftentimes more is better, as long as you're remaining conscious of what you're putting in and being careful with that. AI prompt should include a subject, the person, the object, a location, and then descriptors of what those items might be. Now, one of the things you want to avoid, which is say you don't necessarily have to not do this, but avoid putting abstract concepts into. A boy who is really likes this flower that's sitting over there or something to that effect. Those slightly more abstract concepts can help, but they can also, because of their somewhat abstract subjective quality, they can be subject to some wild misinterpretation as well. So that's the kind of thing where you just have to be aware of that. That may be an element that you need to remove or add or remove to your prompt. And then things that help are aesthetic and style keywords, which we'll see really quickly in the demonstration here. These phrases can add to the finishing touches for the rendering. So if we go to the next page, so this is the environment that you'd be in, and it begins with, as always, and those of you who've used any chats, there's going to be a box for you to actually put in information here. And I started this off by telling it to create a portrait of a man from the 17th century in the style of J.S. Bach on the cover of the Well-Tempered Clavier. So I provided some information here. Interestingly enough, if I said create an image of J.S. Bach, it would come back and say, I can't do that. It literally the algorithm does not want to work with real people. So the way around this, in a sense, was to say in the style of, and so it's giving me an image in the style of that book, of that cover, which is really what I wanted in the end. And then I prompted it slightly further and told it to make some changes, which I'm not going to talk about that too much because we're going to jump back in to the presentation. But for those of you who don't know, as Rush employees, Copilot is a part of, you have access to that. And very often for me, I'll just go to bing.com and it might bring me to that. And I'll simply hit on Copilot. It'll bring me to Copilot. And if I'm wanting it to generate images, I'll just begin my prompt by saying create an image and such.
I have a quick question, if it's okay.
Sure.
Have you come across the error message that says you need to use Microsoft Edge
I've not,
for
no.
for Copilot at all?
No.
I'm on a
You've
Mac.
encountered that?
I have, and I wasn't sure. I haven't used this pathway though, going to Bing first and then using Copilot, so that might be why.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm on a Mac as well, but that's
Yeah.
interesting. And I spoke a moment ago about the initial prompt and how to get started and adding descriptors. Another option, and this may be cheating a little bit here as this is really about text to image, but you can also, if you're trying to describe a style or something like, and you're at a loss for that, if you have an image in mind that you would like to create something in that vein, it is possible for you to select the option here to add an image, and you can upload an image, for example. And then you can actually, in your prompt, you can reference that image and say, in the style of this image. So that's another way to quickly begin the process of your prompt. So in this case, we've got the initial prompt that we want to work with. And so my initial prompt here was please create a photorealistic image of a doctor performing an examination on an elderly person. And the image should include the examination room in which the procedure is being performed. So this is low in content as far as a lot of description. I just have a general idea of what I want. but I have included a stylistic or aesthetic reference. I told it to be photorealistic. I've indicated the subjects and descriptions of them, doctor, patient, and then also included the actions. What are they doing? There's an examination going on. And the result is something, again, a good starting point, not necessarily what, now that I look at it, what I want my final product to be. And before we move on, one more quick thing to note here is when you're using, in this case, Bing and Dolly through Rush, it's indicating your personal and company data are protected in this chat. So this information is not going to be feeding into sort of the collective view that people publicly, for example, would be able to draw from any information that you're sharing here. So now I've got my first revision that I'm going to be making here. And I told it I like the image 3 from the previous, where the patient is sitting up on the examination table. Please discard the other images from that initial group and include the following elements. So now I'm revising this. I'm indicating the ethnicity of the doctor, an African-American woman. The patient should be an elderly Caucasian woman. I hadn't specified that previously for either. And the examination room should include instruments commonly found in a doctor's examination room. Okay, so again, I've given that additional information of ethnicity and gender and room elements. All right, and we can see what we come up with. Now all the doctors are African-American females. The patients are elderly Caucasian women. They're in different positions and these may or may not work for what I want. So from this group, again, I'm looking at what I like, and let's go to the next revision. Now, actually, hold on one second before I want to just kind of point out here a little more closely, is that this is the image that I referenced. I said I liked that one. And so this is sort of what these are, is in terms of the elements that are found in that, they're coming over here in addition to the items that I had added, the additional descriptors. Okay, next page, please. All right. So these are the results that came back from that. So we have, we are having some interesting things here. The one element that I had added previously was to have it do, this was going to be a respiratory examination. And this is a kind of a great example of where things can get a little bit strange as Laura had referenced, confidently incorrect. So I've had a respiratory examination before. I've never had the doctor place the stethoscope in front of my face. Maybe that's something that's done, but it is a little odd. So we have that. So it did do some things, but things have gotten strange. Somebody mentioned earlier about the initial stethoscope. I don't know about stethoscopes very much, but we can see here there's some odd things. There's a stethoscope with another tube that's coming apparently from nowhere as well. So it's strange. So we'll go to our next slide. And again, this is just more of a close-up, so you get a little more closely about some of the oddness that's going on here. Does anyone else by chance see anything else that looks amiss that I might have missed? There's that IV in the back that loves the IVs. All right, so the third revision, I'm incorporating what I learned from that other one. Please revise these images so the doctor's stethoscope is at the patient's chest. I think that's more appropriate. And we have a closer view of the two people from the side. So one of the things I'm wanting to do is make sure that the images, again, a little bit closer generally and side to side, and that the stethoscope is positioned what I think to be more appropriately. And the result here, as we see, is a bit better. Let's go to that next page so we can see the previous collection compared to this one. And yeah, although I know we can't see the previous as clearly, overall, this is generally an improvement in getting to pretty much where I want to. There is what I'd say, I think, to be a little bit of a drift. Remember previously I'd asked to have an African-American woman and a Caucasian female as the patient. And the top left, to my eye, seems like it's drifting a bit. This person, the male, looks like a man to me. And if that was somehow critical to what I'm trying to do, I would want to call that out and correct that. And likewise with the doctor, she looks more South Asian to me, but again, that's just a matter of perception. Probably in reality, not that important. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And I'll try to address these two items. So I said these are good. can you revise to make the doctor an African-American woman and the patient an elderly Caucasian woman? And the response I get from Copilot is, I'm sorry, but I cannot do that. I've already created the image according to your previous request where you specified that the doctor should be an African-American woman and the patient should be an elderly Caucasian woman. Please check the image again and let me know if you have any other feedback. Thank you for using Copilot. So at this point, it's essentially telling me, you already asked me that, I've already given you that. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh, well, that's the end of this particular series, or I've got to find another route. But let's go to the next page. It did actually produce another set of images. And that's essentially it. It seems like it did perhaps pay a little more attention to what one might say are overt examples of gender and ethnicity. But so that's what we got there. And that's sort of the end of that particular series. So then last but not least, go to the last slide, just kind of recap a little bit. But just to point out that, as I said at the beginning, there's these four major considerations you want to have. The length of your prompts, which, as we've seen, can actually be quite long if you wish to. The prompt should include the subject, person, object, or location, and the descriptors, and avoiding abstract concepts because they tend to yield unintended results, if you will. You want to focus more on concrete nouns to anchor those prompts. And finally, to refine the overall aesthetic and the style, some considerations you want to make are to use keywords and phrases that capture your desired visual attributes. The tendency with generative AI is to kind of default to what we might call it more photorealistic, or someone had said Pixar-like style. But it is absolutely possible, as we saw, for example, in the opening slide for this segment, the sort of Baroque style image of somebody who's sort of like Johann Sebastian Bach. So again, you can include those kinds of references, and you may well get results that are fairly close to that and diverge from the photorealistic. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Just a show of hands, how many people are excited about this? You use your reactions, put it in the chat, come on camera. Who's excited about all this stuff? I got one. Laurie is. Kathy, good. Chris, how about you? You came on camera. You must have something to say.
I always have something to say. No, this is pretty exciting. I'm trying it as Daniel's doing it. I'm trying it on my system, and I had some errors. I asked them to create a image that looked like Travis Kelce, and I was having a hard time doing that. And then I changed my prompt quite a bit, and then it seems to have been able to do it. So
Yes, I'm not liking if you don't tell exactly what you want, what your outcome is. It seems like it takes a lot of thought and process, and I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yep. And prompt engineering is an actual job title. And I think as of a year ago, it was making, $300,000 a year was one of the salary figures that I heard for prompt engineers, which is astounding to me. I mean, this is going to create a whole new field of jobs. Well, I like Emily says prompt perfect for refining prompts. Takes some of the grunt work out of the process.
Yes, it's a great tool.
Yeah, and Claudia, there's some definitely litigation coming up. We're in the Wild West at the moment, but I suspect we're going to have some pretty significant guardrails coming up sometime soon.
I have a question.
Sure.
Barbara.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing. But I did try a very specific prompt, and it said that I needed a boost. What does that mean?
Somebody else was asking about that earlier. We haven't seen that one yet, so we're going to have to look at that and get back to you, because that's a new one. That's a new error for us. And remember that
specific or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's most of these systems work on credits. They give you buy a certain number of credits, or you are gifted a certain number of credits. And once you're out of credits, and it may be that you're encountering, are you logged in to your Rush account?
Maybe that was the problem.
It could be.
I think that might be it. Yeah, because I don't believe you should need boosts or credits in order if you're logged in with your Rush account.
I'll try it again. Thanks.
All righty,
So
let's
with
talk
that,
about
yeah.
image to text.
Okay, so now that Daniel's covered AI text to image creation, current capabilities around that, Emily and I are going to be looking into the opposite, image to text. So here's just one example of image to text using, again, Bing Copilot. And for this prompt and its response, I gave Bing a table from KFF on the social determinants of health, and asked it to provide just a basic description of the table. You'll notice here that the table includes 6 factors that affect the social determinants of health, or that make up the social determinants of health, and lists out what these factors include. So in my experience, the reason I chose a table, and also I played with infographics and charts, is that I found that these free tools such as Bing are more successful at describing and interpreting these kinds of images, info-based images, than say reading and interpreting complicated realistic imagery such as x-rays or acting in a sort of diagnostic capability. They were less successful at that. At least in terms of the tools, the free tools I was using. We know, though, that medically focused AI tools, which are out there, are better at this, but currently we don't have access. So we're just demonstrating what we do currently have access to. So here you'll see the image itself alongside the output. As you can see, I use a very simple prompt. I just asked Bing to please provide a description of this table. And this was its response. I'm not going to read through it all, but as you can see, it provides a description of what we're looking at, the 6 main categories you see, the subcategories within those 6 main categories. And then it also provided me with somewhat of an interpretation of what I'm looking at, talking about the complex and interrelated nature of the social determinants of health. So at the very least, using AI to generate a very literal description of an image could, potentially support things like accessibility and personalized learning. For example, if you are looking to quickly generate alt text for an image that you may be using in a presentation or in your course, or to assist students in interpretation of such imagery. But what I also perceive as really great educational value of an image to text situation such as this is that it acts as kind of a launching pad for continued engagement and revised and refined prompts. As we've been learning, this is very much an iterative process that requires an investment of time. But it was interesting how, just for me, who knows much less about the social determinants of health as you all do, it led me to different questions and sort of investigative paths that I might not necessarily have gone down had I not begun this process. For example, after I gave Bing this image and asked it to give me a description, I asked a number of other questions, one involving current initiatives in Illinois to address health disparities, right? And got some information on that. And of course, all of this should be investigated for accuracy, which is, of course, where you come in as the subject matter expert if you choose to utilize this kind of prompt with your students or on your own time. So you might reflect, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about that briefly on how you might use this in your teaching. So just one example, Emily's going to give us, show us another one.
Right, so this is using the premium version of ChatGPT-4. So that's the paid version. And what I did is ChatGPT-4 excels at the kinds of things that Laura describes with its image to text feature, but with ChatGPT-4, you can also upload other kinds of imaging. So here I uploaded an X-ray and gave a very minimal prompt. And you see on the screen the output that it provided. I don't have the level of expertise to evaluate the accuracy of the output. So if it's wildly inaccurate, please feel free to let me know in the chat. I was impressed by the output with the level of what seems to be detail. And then, of course, the disclaimer at the end that one would still want to actually consult a medical professional in this case. Another thing that I wanted to share is just as an experiment, I've tried this image with the same prompt every month for the past few months. And every time I've gotten a completely different answer. This one seems very confident in its response. Previously, I've gotten replies that this looks like a perfectly fine ankle. There's absolutely nothing wrong. The responses have varied wildly, and this is not uncommon. It's due to something called model drift, and that could happen over time as the AI tools get saturated with a lot of different training data, that the responses can vary. But if this seems accurate, to me, it seems like this could be yet another possibility in your teaching toolkit to use these kinds of imaging features with your students to assess different kinds of images, for example. One last thing I will say is that this morning I tried the same image and prompt in Gemini Plus, which is the premium version of Google Bard that is currently free for the next 2 months. And it said it couldn't answer the question. It couldn't analyze or do anything due to ethical concerns. So it just absolutely refused.
We're standing on the precipice of a completely different way of generating our lectures and videos and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, I'm really loving the workflow and how my daughter even told me, you shouldn't brag about it so much, Mom, they're going to fire you. But what I've discovered is that it takes a lot of the pain away from when I have blank page syndrome. I don't know if you guys get that, where if I'm tasked with starting something, I look at the blank page and just say, ugh, for at least a few days. And it takes me a while to kind of get started. And sometimes I have to wait until the last minute so that I have enough pressure that I just actually do it. But anyway, using AI in presentations takes away a lot of that. We're going to talk about a couple of the pros, some of the cons, and then hopefully where to start. So the potential benefits for using AI to generate your presentations is that it does save a tremendous amount of time. It can save time, but that's also a con because you spend so much time editing that sometimes it feels like it's taking more time. They tend to have a very professional look and feel and use a lot of icons and imagery that really puts the information in a very organized format, which is amazingly helpful. It also, when I use AI, a lot of times I skip over things that I think are just assumed knowledge. And in reality, you're not supposed to do that when you're teaching because we don't ever want to assume that people know things. So it always puts in the steps that I would have not thought to put in there. So that's really helpful. Another feature that I like about it is that it's almost always ADA compliant. So I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm using the right colors or is this font good enough for people that use screenwriters, etc. For me, helping with creativity, I was talking about earlier, just the jumping off place and having something to start with. Even if I edit every single slide and change the whole direction of the presentation, it at least gets me started. And I need that push sometimes. AI is super good with data visualization. It can summarize data. It can interpret data, and it can create charts and graphs and whatnot so that you don't have to do that. I don't know how many times I've struggled with trying to create a pie chart and just wanted to jump off a ledge. Using AI, I don't have to do that anymore. Ledges are safe. Really good for translation, right? So if you want to do your presentation in another language, it will translate it for you. And then this is pretty new, not that new, but it's getting better every day. You can beam yourself into, Helsinki or Dusseldorf or Paris. So rather than actually going to those places, you can send your avatar and your avatar will present for you. And I don't think we do that here at Rush yet, but I think they were doing it at Johns Hopkins. Was that where we saw that, you guys? Anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Johns Hopkins. In terms of the downsides, yeah, like we've seen with some of just the basic images, not very in depth. They tend to be a little surface. Sometimes they're not original. Sometimes they're very impersonal. They have that Pixar look to them. The hallucinations are a real thing. They tend to over rely on data, meaning they don't have the nuance that we would have as real people. They tend to get saturated and so have a difficult time handling overly complex prompts. Sometimes it's hard to customize them. Sometimes it'll just crash and stop and not give you what you want. And there are those ethical concerns we've been talking about in the chat, things like copyright infringement, things like, is it really my image if I upload an image and then just modify it? Is it really my image? There's a lot of questions there. I basically am going to go through a few examples with this. If you guys want to stop at any point or talk about anything, I encourage you to jump in. Let me just change my space and we'll go to Beautiful AI first. This is a website that I use for creating just a general presentation. I paid for this one out of my pocket. They do have a free version, but it's very limited. And I found that pretty much across the board. It's much better with the paid version, but I'm not going to pay for all these different subscriptions. I paid for the two that I like most, and then I'll just use the free one from here on in. But I can actually generate with AI. I can either generate, Beautiful AI will allow me to create a presentation using a template, using something that I've already created in PowerPoint. I can import a PowerPoint, but I also can just generate with AI. And somebody give me a prompt, somebody from the audience, a prompt, any prompt. If you don't give me one, I'll just make one up, but it won't be as good. It won't be as dramatic.
I have to do a presentation on pediatric allergy soon, so maybe that one. I don't know if it would work, but.
How long do you want it, Julian?
How long?
Yeah.
The presentation has to be an hour.
And and it was on pediatric
Allergy. And it's for advanced practice nurses.
And let's see, 1 hour presentation, pediatric allergist. And how many slides do you think you want it to be, roughly?
I mean, I usually do like 20 or 25. I don't know. I don't think it should be too long.
Let's see what it does. Do you have any additional websites that you would use, or any specific?
I mean, there's guidelines, but I don't know. I don't know right now.
Next, and you can upload a file. So if you have notes that you want to incorporate, or if you have a web page that you go to that, pediatricallergies.com, you can put that in, or you can just type in additional text here. Let's see what it gives us just here. And I have no idea if this is going to work. So a full disclosure, I'm stepping out on a limb and may fail miserably here. They gave me a reduced price, and I went back to them and I said, that's really too high. Can I have less? And they gave it to me. So yeah, never hesitate to ask for more. And here's our output. Do too much. But basically what I like about their presentations are that they come up with the graphics and they use pictures that are supposed to be copyright free. We don't really know that though, do we? Right. And then I love the icons that they use, because and the way that they break up the information on the page. Julianne, what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. Has some information to go by. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting kind of a PowerPoint that would be more consistent on each slide, but they seem like they're variable, the background and how much information, I was thinking about it would be more consistent, but it's interesting.
Well, and there again, you
the
can
style.
Yep, you can absolutely change the colors and make them more consistent if you want to do that. But that's beautiful. Gave me 10. I don't know why, but that's beautiful AI. The next one I wanted to do for you was Filmora. This one is an app that you download. And what Filmora will do, and I'm really running out of time, so I'm not going to even show you, but it will essentially you can input your text and it will create the video for you with imagery, with voiceover, with captions, the whole 9 yards. And then you just go through, edit your captions, edit your pictures if you want to, and you're off to the races. This is Microsoft Copilot in PowerPoint. In PowerPoint itself, you can add ChatGPT for PowerPoint. right? And so if we were to do the same prompt, pediatric allergies for advanced practice nurses, 1 hour lecture. Let's see what it does. Again, I have no idea what it's going to do. And I picked the snow template just for fun, but you don't have to have that. It gives you your outline. You can adjust these things if you want to, and then you can hit continue, and now it's creating our slides.
Hey guys, it's processing this. I'm curious, would it accept a an outline as the prompt?
Yes. Yeah, you can just type in, you can just upload the outline, copy and paste the outline into your, we'll just do 7 slides so it's faster, and we'll hit continue. Okay, let's go ahead. Yeah, and Emily, I noticed you were talking about the VBA code. That's something we should probably go into in another workshop entirely. All right, and here we have our slides starting to come through. Why don't I go on to the next one while this is still processing, and hopefully it'll be ready by the time we come back. The last one I was going to show you, well, I was going to show you Gemini, but we talked about 1 hour lecture on the social determinants of health and how it relates to healthcare. It created my outline for me. And I went through and I read it and I said, oh, yes, that's perfect. That's exactly what I would do for that lecture. And then I can copy this text and paste it into Filmora and have it generate the video for me. The newest one, it was literally just put out 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago now. This one is not available for public consumption yet, but will be very shortly. It was just released today. This is a photorealistic stylish woman walking down a Tokyo street with a warm, glowing neon and animated city signage. And then we've got an historical view of California during the gold rush. A van driving up a mountain road. Looks like California. This one made us laugh because this one is an art gallery. And yet if you look at some of the images in the art gallery, they are creepy. Creepy, creepy, creepy. Like, what is this? Who is this supposed to be? So yeah, and this one up here, it's like a Bosch painting almost. It's really, I expect demons to be leaping from the bottom. But anyway, that is all coming up and brand new. Still working. So that's one of the downsides, I think, for some to create a presentation as it would to type it up. But I do like that it's almost always going to give you very organized content. It's almost always going to give you a holistic view of what you should be doing. So it's a good starting place, a good jumping off place, if you will. Questions, thoughts, issues, complaints, wants, needs, desires about text to video or using AI to create presentations. Again, such a high level overview. We could go into depth on any of them.
Can I just ask, where do I see, I've got my other screen up for PowerPoint. Where do I see like the chat GPT, like what you've got there? Is that a different version maybe?
This is the regular PowerPoint presentation. And then when I go to the 3 dots on the other end, on the far end on the right, I click on more options and I had to add it in.
Oh, okay.
So let's see where my add-ins are. So this little box right here, this little table at the end is your add-ins icon. And if you click on that, you can add any of these things to your PowerPoint presentation. So I added ChatGPT and you can go, there's more, there's so many, right? And then I added ChatGPT and then once it was added, then I can find it under the 3 dots and I can create a ChatGPT PowerPoint.
Awesome, I found it.
All right. So Julianne, just really quickly, is this one better than the beautiful AI one?
I think the information is a little bit better.
Good, good. So thoughts, questions, issues, want to chat? We're out of time, but we can stay if you want to chat more, or I can.
Peg, would you mind throwing up the exit ticket for folks who need to leave?
Yes, absolutely.
What's the exit ticket for? That's a new one. Get credit or something?
Oh, no, I wish. No, just let us know how we did. And also really to get your feedback on what else we can do around this topic to support you. Yeah, absolutely. So the link I threw in the chat, and here's the QR code for those who want to use it. Thank you so much for completing that. I think Emily wanted to just introduce or remind folks of a couple other things, maybe.
We could back up a few slides. First of all, I just wanted to bring your attention to a couple upcoming events. So one is next month, March 20th, we'll have a workshop for course design and academic workflows. I'll be presenting with faculty member Nadine Larrett, and we'll talk about different ways that you can use AI to help with some administrative and course design tasks. So please mark your calendars for that. And then also, if you can forward one slide, we're in the process, City is in the process of helping to get started an AI learning community. And this is really conceptualized as a place for faculty and staff to continue developing a shared understanding of AI and sort of building resources, sharing knowledge, and just a way to keep building on what we're doing already in the workshops. If you're interested in taking part in that, please reach out to me directly, and my email's on the screen, I can pop it in the chat. We're sort of working out what it will entail, but it's open to anyone with a variety of levels or interest, and open to all sorts of different forms of participation. So you can invest as much time and energy as you want, or if you don't have time to pour every free waking moment into AI like some people, that's perfectly okay too.
I think this chat GPT thing is pretty slick in the PowerPoint. That never occurred to me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. And as always, I always reiterate this, it's only as good as the prompts you put in and the refinements that you make. Right. So you just like we tell the students, you can't just create a presentation and off you go. You've got to actually go through and make sure that it's accurate and refined, and that the pictures actually make sense, that sort of thing. But it does give you that jumping off place, which I need so much.
And absolutely, it's a collaboration, right, between you
Yep.
and the tool, right? It's not it's not the tool doing your work for you necessarily, although it can in some cases.
No,
In some cases.
Yeah, I sometimes I need a little nudge, and that's what I like. I put what I need in, and it's like, okay, now I just fill in my own, I go in and change stuff, but it gets me into my working brain, so. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Primes the pump.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any other comments? Anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Any questions before we close out? We want to be respectful of time and not keep you here overly late. Please let us know what else you want to learn about, because we want to do what you want us. We want to create what you need from us. So, okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See everyone. Have a great rest of your day.